Final game for the All Blacks and the Springboks in the Rugby Championship 2021 is on this weekend. 8 o'clock local time, I believe, over in Australia, which makes it a pretty late one here in New Zealand, 11 p.m. Nice morning game for Springboks fans, about 9 a.m. I believe. The All Blacks are chasing the Grand Slam, if you can call it that, for the Rugby Championship. Ian Foster did talk about kind of getting a slam. We don't have a trophy for it, but yeah, he basically wants to go 6-0. The Springboks, if they can get a win here, would finish with an even record as they are in third, having dropped 3 games on the bounce. They're at 2-3, so they certainly want to finish their season on a high, as is kind of evidenced by their team. But either way, we'll go through the lineups, some of the stats, predictions, and you guys can let me know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Usual broadcasters apply. Sky in New Zealand, Stan in Australia, Supersport, and for you guys in the States, Flow Rugby. There's a link down in the description for Flow Rugby, seeing as they've partnered up for this tournament. You can watch them live or on demand. I'm not actually sure what time it'll be on in the States, but either way, Flow's got them on demand. So if you want to watch them delayed, then by all means do so. The Springboks lineup is pretty stable. There's not a heck of a lot of changes. They've brought in Nché at loose head, otherwise it's still Mbonambi and Nyakane in the front row, albeit Nyakane switching from loose head to tight head in the absence of Franz Malherbe, who has a neck injury, which is unfortunate because he was putting the All Black scrum under a fair bit of pressure at scrum time. But you don't lose a lot with Trev because he's been, apart from his recent switch back to loose head, he's been performing well at tight head for quite some time. So, yeah, it's still a pretty strong looking front row for the Boks. Etzebeth and Jager continue on as the locks. Kolisi, Smith, and Vermeulen, the same 6-7-8 combo. And you can tell Kwagga Smith had a pretty good game last week because there wasn't a lot of talk about him. It tends to be if he doesn't do anything right. He's one of those guys that attracts criticism. But, he was pretty good at the breakdown, which is part of the reason he's there. So, yeah, kind of good to see him get a second crack at it. But Kolisi was probably the star of the show. Both equally very good, but Kolisi was into a bit of everything. And he is captain. Again, he has played a lot of rugby for the Springboks this campaign. Hopefully he gets a rest at some point, but I guess in a key game, you do need your captain, and you do need him to be playing well. Klerk and Pollard is 9-10, so no changes there. There's been a fair bit of talk about how much these guys kick, and Pollard, when asked about it, just said basically that's the strategy. And looking at the result, man, 2 points in it, and it's only one of Pollard's goal kicks that missed it. Why would you change it if it's that close to winning? I know Rassie's kind of put out a slightly defensive tweet recently because they've been under a lot of flack for kind of losing 3 on the bounce. But, yeah, maybe missing a few opportunities. But they only lost by 2 points against the All Blacks, which is closer than a lot of teams get. So there you go. Jacques also mentioned they lost 2 games basically recently to single kicks, the Cooper one and then the Geordie Barrett one. So it's not been that far off the pace. Just that one game against Australia, they were a bit kind of well beaten. Allende and are 12 and 13. I was kind of hoping to see Allende running at David Havili a fair bit last week. We didn't really see a lot of it. I think he's only credited with 2 runs as Allende. When you've got a guy who's that big a ball carrier, you would like to see him kind of trucking it up, but I guess it relies on him getting the ball from the guys inside him. So fingers crossed he gets a bit of ball. Mapimpi, Nkosi, and Roux are the back 3. Remember, Colby has been struggling with fitness for a while and once again didn't complete his full training session, so kind of not eligible for selection, which is a real pity. But Nkosi again is no slouch, scored a try last week, so yeah, hopefully he gets a bit more ball as well. Marx, Kitshoff, and Koch, that's the front row replacement, same as last week. They pretty much came on straight after halftime, so they may well do the same here. Vincent Koch, I think maybe he was a bit delayed, but he's given the All Blacks a bit of a torrid time at scrum time as well. It's that Springbok tight heads, they've got a lot of depth. Mostert and Visa are the other 2 forward replacements because it's only the forwards. 5 forwards on the bench this week. It's not the 6-2 split. Visa comes in for Van Staden, who is injured. He's got a shoulder injury, which is unfortunate as well because he had a really bit of an impact on the game when he came on last week. Herschel Yankees, Elton Yankees, and Frans Steyn round out the rest of the bench. Elton didn't even get off the bench last week, so it's like you might as well have played the 6-2. I think it's because they said Marco, they were worried he was going to have to come off injured, so they kind of kept Elton in reserve. But and Marco ended up being injured to the point where he can't play this week. But yeah, I hope Elton gets some minutes anyway. The All Blacks guys, it's a bit more changed up with Moody, Taylor and Laulala being the same front row and Retallick and Barrett being the same second row, but the rest of the team, as it's just started really piddling down here, has some changes to it. Like Weber comes in for TJ Perenara at 9. He's up from the bench. TJ drops down. Jacobson's back fit. Remember, he had a bit of a stomach illness last week, so it was a late withdrawal. He was replaced by Blackadder, and Blackadder was replaced by Satutu on the bench. So it's kind of shifting to that original plan with Jacobson being at number 8 and Blackadder being on the bench. So Satutu's the guy who was out of the 23. Blackadder still in the squad, even though he's on the bench this time. Savia moves to number 7, so you got open side flankers as captains on both teams. I would expect both of them to play the majority of the minutes. I don't know. Is Visa going to replace Vermeulen, or is he going to replace Kolisi? I mean, he could really go anywhere because they've got a bit of versatility in the box. But yeah, Havili at 12, ALB at 13, so ALB is back in the squad. Rico is still in the 23. He moves to the left wing. And yeah, it's good to see ALB back. He's been in and out for a little while recently. Havili, like I mentioned, I was a little bit concerned about him going into last week's game, but he acquitted himself really well. 6 from 7 tackles is a solid shift from him. The back three, though, is where you really see the changes. Rico, like I mentioned, to the left wing, Sevu Reece to the right wing, and Geordie Barrett stays there at fullback. So All Blacks struggled under the high ball last week, man. George Bridge couldn't catch seemingly anything. Will Jordan, I don't think, had the best of times either. Geordie Barrett was the best of the bunch. Even he missed, what was it, like 6, according to Rugby Pass? He missed a few as well. So he was definitely the best of the bunch, but they can expect more of the same. So they've shifted things, and it's weird because last week when you looked at Bridge, Jordan, and Geordie Barrett, it's kind of like 3 fullbacks. Should have been a lot better under the high ball than they were, but yeah, like I mentioned, Geordie had a pretty good kind of, I think Rugby Pass called it like a diffusal rate. Like the box only managed to get back very few of the kicks that he was directed to, even if he didn't catch them. So that's at least one kind of good thing for the All Blacks there. But Reece is pretty solid under the high ball as well. So see where he goes, even though he's not the biggest guy, he's pretty athletic to get his body high. Almua, Bauer, and Tuangafasi are the replacement forwards, the front rowers. So Carl Tuinukuafe drops out of 23. Tupulotu, Blackadder, like I mentioned. TJ Mounga is back in the squad. So Tupaia is out of the 23, which is an unfortunate one because he had a pretty good impact when he came on. And DMAC is there as well. So yeah, it's a few changes. Like the forward pack is largely the same. The only different body is Jacobson, and Savia's got a different number on his back. But yeah, the back three especially have seen some changes. So obviously looking for maybe a bit more depth building, but also just a bit more high ball diffusal, you would say. For the stats last week, like I mentioned, the high ball stuff was an issue. I mean, the box kicked 38 times, which is a fair few. 9 from Faf to Klerk. I think Springboks fans would look to see him passing a little bit more. I mean, there's been highlighted especially one incident where they had a big overlap out right. He decides to box kick it, but he wasn't even looking for the pass because he had his back to the guys who had the overlap. But also, like I mentioned, the All Blacks struggled under the high ball, so I don't know if it was a terrible option, but if he'd looked up, he may have done things differently. But either way, 29 passes, 19 kicks, and 1 run from Faf last week, so we'll see if those numbers continue to be the way they are. Handré had 9 kicks, and Willie Leroux had 8, so that's where you get the majority kicking from. The All Blacks had 18, 8 from Bowden Barrett. And Bodie probably needs a good game as well. He's got Richie on the bench. Richie's just come back into the squad. Remember, he was a late arrival with some parenting duties to perform back here in New Zealand, so Bodie could use a solid one to really impress, to cement his spot at number 10, because Richie, I don't know if we felt his absence a wee bit, maybe. I don't know. It's I wouldn't say that Bodie's ended any argument that Richie's the number 1 guy. If anything, the question is how's Richie going to be when he actually comes back. So we'll find out depending on how many minutes he gets. Run meters last week, 402 to 255. That's with the All Blacks having the favourable number there. It obviously looks like the All Blacks were kind of cutting it up. But I'm always interested in the run meters per carry. How many meters did these guys actually get when they did decide to carry? And the numbers are pretty much the same. 4.1 to the All Blacks, 3.9 to the Springboks. So when the Springboks did carry it, they were getting go-forward ball, despite the fact that the All Blacks' defence this season has been pretty good. So that's an encouraging sign if they decide to truck it up a little bit, the Boks. Defensively, though, the Boks have some slightly worrying numbers. In the last couple of weeks, they've been in the 70s for their defensive tackling percentage, 72.5 against Australia, and then 77 against New Zealand last week. Every game prior to that, if you take the average, like the British and Irish Lions tour, the game against Georgia, the 2 games against Argentina, and the first one against Australia, they were like at 87%. So where this kind of 10% plus drop has come from, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something they want to rectify. You can't be going into a game against the All Blacks with those kind of numbers. The All Blacks are at 84%, so performing pretty solidly without being kind of phenomenal, but still very, very good. Lineouts is one area the All Blacks will need to work on, though. They missed a few last week. Jager was a bit of a problem for them. He stole a few. South Africa only had the 1 loss, 10 from 11 were they. The All Blacks 17 out of 21. So didn't go all their way for sure. It was a close game. Both sides had areas where they were dominant. Joe Moody will have to watch out for his scrummaging because he was under the pump a wee bit last week. And yeah, Bell when he comes on to replace him as well. But yeah, traditionally things have been pretty close. Like I mentioned, last week was 19-17. The most recent 5 games, it's 3-1 to the All Blacks with 1 draw being there in the mix as well. The average score 25-22. So there's only 3 points in it on average across the last 5 games. So it's generally pretty tight affairs, and last week was certainly no different. That being said, the All Blacks have got a 14-point head start with the Rugby Forecast algorithm and a 10-point head start with the bookies. The only one of the 10 games where the All Blacks won by 10 points was the Rugby World Cup game, which I think was 23-13. Every other time it's been closer than that. So, I don't know. We'll have to see how things go. I know there's a few Springboks fans kind of looking, why don't you change the side up? I think they'll save that kind of thing for the Northern Tour. I don't know that you go into a match against the All Blacks and chuck in a bunch of 1-cap, 2-cap guys and really shift things up. I think you go for the win. You play your best team every time. I know they need to build some depth because they've been playing some pretty familiar faces and some familiar positions. But yeah, I wouldn't have thought this is the game to be. I'm excited to see Fussy and Co as much as everybody else. But yeah, this is probably one where you take a little bit more cautious approach. The All Blacks, likewise, I think they've only really made changes to maybe look at some areas to shore up from last week where they were a wee bit under pressure. But yeah, the All Blacks handling, I think, should be better than last week. The Springboks tackling should be better than last week, so fingers crossed we are in for a cracker. You guys let me know your thoughts. How do you think this one is going to go? Do you think the bookies and the predictions have got it right, that the All Blacks should kind of romp home? Or do you think the record between these two teams recently will kind of continue on and it'll be a real back and forth ding-dong battle? Anyway, you guys let me know your thoughts, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.